The Mohair Intarsia Cowl transforms the smallest amounts of mohair into a luxurious and elegant gift. You will need 1 3/4 ounces each of 2 coordinating colors. These can be both variegated, solid, or a mix. Although the gauge is not that important, mine is 8 stitches and 9 rows equal 2 inches. I'm demonstrating on a Brothers Bulky 230, which has intarsia built right into the carriage, but any bulky or mid-gauge flatbed machine with intarsia capability or an intarsia carriage will work. What I like about this pattern is that the design grows organically. There is no design plan, yet it works every time. So, let's explore the technique of intarsia in its glorious simplicity. We are going to bring up 40 needles to start. And we're going to do a cast on with waste yarn, so we're going to retract every other needle. We'll be back to the needles in a second. I always start by retracting the second needle on the right, if my carriage is on the right, because I want the first needle to knit off when I go and knit the first row. I'll hang my cast on comb. I'll add a little weight to it, just to pull down my second hand. And I'm going to bring up every other needle that I retracted. Now, this one on this end is the empty one, but it'll get knit going this way. It'll be the first needle to knit going this way. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of waist knitting just to get things going. That should be plenty. I'm going to cut my yarn, put a clip on this little end. Now, we are going to be doing intarsia, and that's what's a real blessing about this particular machine, because, as you can see, all you have to do is flip this lever over to intarsia, and it'll start knitting intarsia. My tension is as high as I can get it to go, and that's like 10 and, 10 and 2 dots, 2 clicks. So that's as high as I can get it to go, because mohair will, it fluffs up as you knit. So the next thing we have to do is return to our needle bed and pull all the needles out to hold. That puts all the stitches behind the latches. And then I'm going to retract the stitches to upper work position. Just push them all to upper work, because that's how this carriage works. It reads them in this mode. Now, because I pushed them all out to hold, that opened all the latches too. And I just checked, all my latches are open. Now, I'm going to thread up. I have 2 different balls of leftover mohair. This is a regular weight mohair. And what I like to do is by the ends, I like to put a little clip on them to start. I'm going to do the blue and violet variegated on my right hand side, and I'm going to do the solid violet on my left hand side. So on this side, since I'm ready to go, because my carriage is on the right, I'm going to lay my yarn from the right to the left, and I'm going to lay it right to the halfway point, right like that. Now, just so I have a second hand while I show you other things, I'm going to put a clip over here, but I will remove this clip before I start knitting. On this side, I'm also going to start by laying the yarn right in between those 2 needles and into the hooks. Okay? On this side. Ultimately, these will cross, but on the first row, you lay it like this. Okay? Now I'm going to take the clip off this one, and I'm going to let the yarn run through my fingers. On the first couple of rows, check very carefully, but I actually check all of them. I'm in intarsia mode, INTAR, and I'm on the highest tension I can get because of this. And I have knit 0 rows, so I'm going to reset I want to keep track of how many rows I go. So I've gone 0 rows because that was my waist knitting there. And I'm just going to knit across. Now notice how the yarn flows through my hand and across. And we'll do it over and over again so you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'm checking my work and everything is knit. Now, the machine will leave the latches open and it'll be in upper work position. And now I have my carriage on my left. Because I have my carriage on the left, I'm going to lay the yarn, starting with the left hand yarn, into the needles, and I'm going to go one further over. This is the first needle knit in the blue, variegated, and I'm going to lay right into that needle. Then I'm going to take the yarn on the right hand side and lay it in the remaining needles and hold it loosely in my hand. I'm putting a little bit of tension on it, just enough so that it stays in the needles, because as you knit across, the yarn is going to flow up and you'll get a feel for it. Okay, now we're going to knit back. See that one? Now that one. Do you see how the yarn flows up? On the right, I'm going to bring up the yarn here, and I'm going to go one. Here's where the first needle that on this one. So I'm going to only go up to this needle and include that needle. So I'm 2 over now. Then I'm going to twist my yarn, bring it up between, and continue this part with my right hand yarn. Now these could be multiple colors. Whatever needles you're putting the yarn in, that's the color it's going to be. Now, once again, I'm putting just the lightest amount of tension to let the yarn flow through and across. Now this is the last blue that was knit. The left hand was this needle here. So I want to thread this one over past that one and right in between these 2 needles. Then I'm going to crisscross the other one in and pick up that. And it lays in. That knit off nicely. Now I'm coming in feeding with my my right one first. I want to include this needle in the purple. And I pick that up right there, and it crisscrossed automatically. So, see the yarn flowing through? Let's do a couple more. I'm going to include this needle, then it crisscrosses over, and I come up between these needles and over to the end. And knit it off. Now I'm watching my needles to make sure everything knit, and it's knitting off perfectly. But surprisingly, mohair works very nice on this machine. So here's my last purple needle, so I want to include that one for the purples. So I'm putting in my yarn right there. Then see how it crisscrosses over? You need to make sure that it crisscrosses, otherwise you'll have a little hole there. It's not the world's worst thing to happen. You just do have to fix it later. Okay, starting with the left, going to the right, I want to include that needle, so right there. This one crosses over automatically, comes up here and into place. Now, I'm going to continue to do this just a few more times. So now I'm going to reverse. See, now I'm headed that way. So I'm going to go one more in blue, pick this one up, and then go the rest of the way in purple. One more this way in purple, which brings me right there. Bring the blue up from behind. Oh, I have to go one more stitch. No, that's right, because I want to get one more on there. There we go. This purple. And do you see how I'm moving? And I'm going to go all the way over to here somewhere. And when I feel like it, I'm going to change direction again. So I'm going to continue to do this, but if you can see here, you see how we got our point? Let's take this out of the way. See how we have a point here? and we're going to go zigzagging all the way. Now some of the blue has purple in it, so it will become interesting. It works really well with variegated, oddly enough. But anyway, I'll see you soon. Well, I'm working in Intarsia and I screwed up. So this is how you fix it. When you're set up for Intarsia, your stitches are already behind the latches, so you can't just easily pull out a row. Here's how you do it. Take your garter bar, put the stopper plate onto the knitting needles. Okay? That stabilizes those knitting needles. Push all of them back so it's out of the way. And if you have a credit card or a latch opener, there we go. Then, take your garter bar, put these on it, bring all my stitches onto the garter bar, push open the latches, reseat, I had to push it, lift it out a little bit to push it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the stitches into the hooks, the heads of the hooks. I'm not going behind the latches at this point. Okay? And I'm working with mohair, so it's a little hairy here. So I'm getting all my stitches back on into the hooks, not behind the latches like you need to be for Intarsia. This one didn't go on. There we go. Got it. Okay. They're all on. There we go. And I'm going to lift off. Now I'm going to add my weight back that I took off because I did find a stitch that was undoing itself. So I fixed that too. I just caught it with a thing and I'll stitch it in later. Okay, now I can take the end of my yarn and I can pull it like so. And you see how the stitches are coming up really into the hook heads. Now that's my first half, and I just lift it, and that takes care of that row. Now this is where I changed yarn at this point. So, and it's twisted. So I have to untwist it. Then I do the exact same thing for this side, because I dropped a bunch of stitches, and it looks like I'm going to have to come back one more row. So pull it, lift it, get to where it crisscrosses, uncrisscross it. Let's see. The hairs on the fibers are caught up there. It's uncrisscrossed, and I can pull this one. There we go, untied that one. And pull this one over to the end and just lift it off. Now the last needle, you probably have to fuss with it. So now I'm pulling down on my knitting to make sure I have everything. I took out 2 rows, so I'll set my row counter back 2 rows. All right, now we have to prepare ourselves for knitting back in Intarsia. So the first thing I'm going to do is push all my stitches back behind the latches. Okay, once you have that done, you can then take your garter bar plate and just push the needles a bit further back so that it's in upper work position and they're all perfectly even then. Now I'm done with my garter bar, so I'm going to put it away for now. However, I still need to do one more thing. If you have a latch opener, fine. If you don't, a cut-off credit card, run it across it to make sure all the latches are open. That way, when you go into Intarsia mode, you're ready to just restrand your yarn. Now, in this one, in my pattern, I'm going with the first color over to here, and with the second color over to here. I'm going to let it feed through my hands, and I'm in Intarsia, and so I'm just going to let it go naturally. And there we go. All fixed. Okay, so now we are just getting to the point where we're running out of one color, and so Therefore, I'm going to end it off, and I've made my 28 inches in length already. So this is just a little bonus. It'll end up about 30 inches. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm aiming to get over to that central point where my zigzag ends right at the center. I do have to have a little extra yarn. And here I am at the center. And so this is where one more row and I'm going to end off. Okay, now that brings us right to the exact point where I started on the other end. So my zigzags will come together. Okay, so this is not much yarn left, but it'll be enough to graft this purple part. So I'm going to leave that there. If you want to know if you have enough, hold it against the purple, and you should have 3 widths of the needle bed at least. And there, I have about 4 widths. Perfect. This one I will hold over the blue so that I have at least 3 needle widths, and I'll give it a little extra. There. So this is where I can cut this yarn. So now I'm going to switch my carriage back to plain knitting. So it knits in all directions. Everything's in upper work position. That's fine. I'm going to put a clip on this just to keep it out of my way. And I don't want it riding up because mohair has a tendency to have interesting things happen. So now I'm going to knit across this row with waste yarn. I can cut my yarn now, and I can knit this off. So here we have this beautiful fabric using our Intarsia techniques, and you do want to inspect the edges, especially if you're working with mohair, because occasionally you'll get a loose stitch. I did find one, but I do have it marked, and I will go back and I will use an end of yarn just to tie it down. I like the Kitchener from the knit side, so the first thing I like to do is knot down this end. So here is my first loop stitch here. So then I'm going to come over to this one and go back into it and then up into the next loop stitch on this side. I'm not going to pull it too tight. I'm just going to try and duplicate the tension. So back into the same loop stitch and up into the next one right there. Pull up a loop, pull the loop through, and try and mimic the tension. And this goes relatively quickly. There's only 40 stitches. So that's what it's going to look like. And then I'm just going to continue on the blue. And I'm going to pick up the long blue length over here. By ending in the center, the zigzag is continuous around the entire cowl. And after a little steaming, I dare you to spot the seam. The length ended to be about 36 inches after blocking, but all you need to do is reach 28 to 30 inches for a comfortable fit. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell to receive notifications of upcoming videos and events. Happy machine knitting!